Sean Huckster here. Today we're going to continue down the road of reviewing and revealing miniature playsets, that is, tiny playsets with worlds inside them. Today we're going to talk about these Star Wars Galoob Micro Machine heads. Now there were a number of these. As you can tell, there were 4 sets of these, which make up 12 entirely, 12 total. There was a Darth Vader, I believe. That was an exclusive somewhere. I do not have that one. However, I do have all 12 of them, other than Darth Vader. So let's start talking about them. Now, let's just first of all acknowledge that this set would never exist if it wasn't for Mighty Max and the Shrunken Heads. This is a Mighty Max Shrunken Head. This is insectoid, and you open them up, and there's a little Mighty Max figure that fits in here, and you take him out, and he stands on a little spot right here. And faces off against the villain, who is carved into the upper portion of the head. Now, Mighty Max, of course, is famous for having these incredibly complicated openable playsets, but when it came down to these shrunken heads, they were very tiny, and they did not have a whole bunch of function. They really were just little tiny heads with an imaginary world inside that you could play with, that your brain could play within, even though there wasn't a lot of function. And that mirrors exactly what's happening to these Star Wars heads. They're even exactly the same scale. So let us start first of all with this one. This will be the Jawa. And so these are beautifully modeled, though. I mean, these are really nicely detailed when you look at them. The hinge is there, of course, and I have a whole video I'm planning on the psychology of hinges, as once you have a playset in your hand, the hinge just kind of disappears from view in your mind. Anyway, like Mighty Max, the Jawa has this little bit of interior detail that forms part of the exterior. In this case, it's the eyes. So when you open him up, his eyes are these little columns here. Not a lot of these do that. That one and the Tusken Raider, I believe, are the only 2 that I know of that actually incorporate the interior into the exterior, much like Mighty Max did. So if you open up this set, you see that it's beautifully painted. It's not glossy. It's kind of matte painted or satin painted, and very well detailed. Here you have these 2 columns, which are supposed to be buildings, I think, because you got this miniature building here, this miniature. Oh, you know what? This is not buildings. This is crates. This is manufactured or merchandise that the Jawas have picked up. Here is their crawler, their sand crawler, and there's the 2 moons of Tatooine. The sky is painted here. The hatch is open, which means that the Jawas are here and they're selling. And you have a little Jawa here, and he's carrying the little blaster that he used to subdue R2-D2 in the first movie. And of course, these fit into little footholds here, so you can display this either closed or open. But if you display it open, you have an entire scene, a Star Wars scene living right here, that your mind can enter and play. So let me just open them all the way up, just to have it there. Of course, they're meant to be up at a 90-degree angle so you can play within the scene. I'm going to do this for visual purposes. And there he is. These figures are more like the Micro Machine figures, in that they're more detailed than a Mighty Max figure would be. And some of them are quite nice. So let's move on to the Tusken Raider, which I already hinted has interior parts that form the exterior. Again, note the beautiful sculpting. This really is well-detailed version of a Tusken Raider head. And again, the hinge is there, but you know, it kind of disappears in your brain. Let's open him up. The little tab there opens. It's easier than I made it look. And you open it up and you see, here's your Tusken Raider in the pose of attacking Luke on Tatooine, when you see him lifting up his gaffy stick. And inside here you've got these pillars, which are supposed to be buildings, I take it, probably within part of Tatooine. Here you've got the crate dragon skeleton, and here you have a bantha, part of a bantha. One big part of the bantha is a big hole with its eye. And there you have the 2 suns again, although they're not painted in this case. 2 suns of Tatooine. And your Tusken Raider sits in his little foothold here, and that's the second one. Both of these are quite nice, by the way. Moving on to Figran D'An. He is one of the Canteen band members. Again, nicely sculpted. A little bit of paint scratch there. This is a used one. It's been a bit worn. But in general, really nicely done. The sculpts are really beautiful on this. Let's open him up. Painting also is very well done, which is no surprise from Galoob and Micro Machines. So inside you have, well, what do you expect? That's just a stone floor. It's a stone floor of the Star Wars Cantina, in which two of his bandmates are in there playing with him. So if you stand him up, you now have the Cantina band doing their thing. So I'll place him here. And just to get him out of the way, I'm going to go on to Boba Fett. Boba Fett, of course, is the famous bounty hunter who, in Empire Strikes Back, was hired to find Han Solo and the rebels, of course. But then he finds Han Solo for Boba Fett and has him frozen in carbonite and takes him back to Boba's lair, which we'll get to in a moment. Here's his rangefinder, which does not come down, but at least it's not attached to the hinge like it almost looks like it is. Detail, again, quite nice. He's even got the blaster dent here that's famous in his in all of his scenes. And of course, if you've watched the Boba Fett TV series as well, he features heavily in there. Of course, that's a Mandalorian helmet, as we know Boba Fett wears. So let's open them up. And what do we get? We have, oh look, it's the Sarlacc pit. This is the Sarlacc. And up here we have Boba Fett's raft. What is it? Anyway, his desert ship. I'm forgetting what it's called right now. And of course you got the dunes of Tatooine here. And it's literally just, I'm not sure quite what this is. This is like it's just a wall of some kind. Oh, you know what that is? That's the deck of the smaller hover, desert hover jet. And he stands here. And he, of course, Boba has his weapon, his famed weapon. And again, a nice Micro Machine sculpt. He's got his jetpack in the back. He's got his cape hanging over him, and the painting and detail is rather nice. And so he stands in his foothold here, which you could face him either way, but let's face him this way. And there's a little peg in this case to hold him in place. Again, you need to kind of put him down on the ground to do that properly. But once he's in place, he's there. And then you have the Sarlacc pit, which you know he falls into, and so you know he's not going to have a good day or next 1,000 years, except if you watch the series, spoiler alert, he does crawl out of the Sarlacc pit alive. But much the worse for wear. Moving on, and to make room, we have the Gamorean Guard. Of course, he is like very much a pig-like creature. He's got the horns here and the tusks here. Again, just a really nice sculpt with for what they're trying to do here. Let's open him up, and sure enough, we have a Gamorean Guard with his famous axe. Again, the paint job is beautiful. Sculpting is absolutely excellent. And inside you have the floor of the Rancor pit, which you have bones, of course. And then what do we have here? Oh, look, it's the Rancor. And much like the horror head, the Shrunken Heads of Mighty Max, when you open it up, these are often seen holding on to the sides of the head. So even so that their fingers sometimes curl around to the outside. And in this case, that's not quite true, but you can see he's holding on to his wall here, which is kind of nice. And then you can place the Gamorean Guard with its pin here. And you even have the grate right there, and more grating here from Jabba's throne room pieces here. I mean, I really do quite like this. Even though there's not a lot of play value in them, the imagination value is incredibly high. Let's move on to Greedo. Greedo is, of course, as you know, somebody hired by, oh, well, I guess he's a bounty hunter as well, because he tries to come after Han Solo on Tatooine to get money for him for Jabba, because Jabba's put a price on his head. And of course, Han shoots first. Han blasts Greedo before Greedo gets a chance to do any harm to Han. And Han then can run off with Chewie and take Luke and Obi-Wan Kenobi off to Alderaan, which of course we know doesn't end well. And there he is, the sculpt again, beautiful. Look at all the scales on the skin. Absolutely lovely. The paint on the eyes is perfect. The little horns here and the ears, absolutely wonderful. And the mouth, it's just exactly what you'd expect. You might think it's a little matte green for Greedo's face, but I think it's pretty good. Let's open him up. What do you end up with? Sure enough, you have Greedo in his outfit. And here he is holding a blaster, which is shooting Han. But guess what? Han is sitting at the table right here inside the cantina. And you can see all the accoutrement around him here, which might even be a hookah pipe, I'm not sure. And then you've got a little figure here. Han is sitting at the table. I don't know, there's not enough detail to show him with the gun under there, but that is definitely one of the small creatures here. It's really hard to tell in this scene. But Greedo, of course, is the focus of this scene. Greedo tries to take down Han, and we all know how that ends. And yes, we do know how that ends because Han shot first, killing Greedo, and then throws some money at the bartender to clean it up and walks away. Next, we have the Scout Trooper, one of the stormtroopers, but in the biker helmet hat, which we see on Endor. Again, beautifully sculpted. No arguments here. There's a gloss visor. You got the little details in this thing here. And we're going to open him up and find, sure enough, we have the Scout Trooper here in his weapon. Beautifully sculpted and painted as always with Galoob. And then you have the scene in Endor. So here you have a log cutting across, and these massive trees, and a speeder bike here. And what I'm only slightly disappointed in is you don't see any of the Ewok traps. Also, interestingly, makes me suspect that this is not the figure that's supposed to come with this set, because it could be any Micro Machines trooper, because this has got a pin. And there's no hole for the pin in this figure. And yet, he is situated. The base is designed to fit there. So either this is the wrong figure, because I bought this at an eBay auction, or somebody messed up in manufacturing because this does not have a hole for the pin. But anyway, I'll place him here. Moving on to the next one. Let's do Admiral Ackbar. Admiral Ackbar, of course, is the Mon Calamari general, who is instrumental in the Rebel assault. And again, beautifully sculpted. Really beautifully sculpted. Let's open it up and see if it's a trap. And of course, here we have Admiral Ackbar, well sculpted. He does have a hole in his base for standing. Here they are aboard one of the Rebel cruisers, planning the attack. And that's Mon Mothma. No, I'm sorry, that's not Mon Mothma. I'm not sure who that is. I thought that was Mon Mothma when I first looked at it. And then another Mon Calamari here. And they are, if you'll notice, looking at the plans for the Death Star where they're about to attack. And this is a beautiful console right here. All well sculpted, beautifully done. Let's put him over here. And move on to Bib Fortuna. Bib Fortuna is one of Jabba's minions. And we see him in Jabba's barge room. And again, nicely sculpted. Well painted. There's not a lot of paint on him. He's kind of like a one-colored figure. Let's open him up and see what's going on. So where we have the figure, no hole in the base because we don't need it. There's no pin in this one, which is why I'm kind of led to believe that in this case, the pin is not supposed to be there. But anyway, again, well-sculpted figure, nicely painted. And inside here, you have exactly what you want to have in here, and that is Jabba the Hutt with his hookah pipe here, or maybe that's the little thing with the frog-type creature in it. And the part of the barge, the part of the throne room that slides across to open up the space for the Rancor, which is there. Jabba's nicely painted. He's a bit, kind of dumpy looking, but a lot of the figures that end up sculpted inside these things don't get great proportions because they're kind of constrained by the space within. And then you have the grate here that that slides across, and they can see the attack of the Rancor below as they try to put Luke to death by Rancor and fail. So that's Bib Fortuna. Moving on to Nien Numb. Nien Numb is a co-pilot and works with Lando to pilot the Millennium Falcon after Han's been captured. Again, beautifully sculpted. Interesting little point about Nien Numb is his spelling is kind of a twist of Alien Number 9. So they didn't have a name for him when they made him, but they just called him Alien Number 9, and that kind of, they twisted it into Nien Numb. Of course, you never hear that name in the movie. You only find out that when you collect the figures. So let's open him up, and what do we end up with? Sure enough, we end up with the Millennium Falcon cockpit. So there's the door to the cockpit, nicely detailed, very well detailed, and then a seat and the console. And he is a seated figure, so he can sit. I don't know, can it close with him? Yes, so it can close with him in the seat, which is kind of nice. Again, nicely detailed, beautifully painted. another nice scene from the movie that your imagination can run wild with. Moving on, we're going to leave Yoda for last because, hey, it's Yoda. Then we have this figure, which, if you watch the beginning of Return of the Jedi, you don't quite know who this is at first, but then you find out it's Princess Leia, and she's there to rescue Han from Boba Fett. She walks in as a bounty hunter of some kind, gets into Boba Fett's lair, and then pulls out a grenade and threatens to blow the whole place up if they don't free Han. And of course, it doesn't quite go as they want, but they do eventually free Han. Beautifully painted, nicely sculpted. Open her up. And here we have Princess Leia with the helmet in her hand, revealing her identity. And what do we have here? Look at that. Han Solo frozen in carbonite. And that's her goal, to free Han. So let's put her, she has the hole, let's put her here where she's supposed to be. Then we have inside of Boba Fett's lair, where Han Solo is held as a trophy by Boba Fett. But don't worry, they do free him. And then they go on to further adventures together. Let's put him here, her here, them here, because it's Leia and Han. And move on to probably the most beloved character in the Star Wars universe, Yoda. And look at the sculpt. That is absolutely perfect. It's almost like a scan of his face. Look at that mouth and the chin, the way it holds his mouth. Just so perfectly like the puppet. Voiced and acted by Frank Oz, of course, beloved Muppet actor and performer. Again, you don't notice the hinges. Your brain just kind of seals that off from your mind, and you open it up and you see, there's Yoda, already sitting in his place. But also, here's a cooking pit, I guess, and there's a snake Yoda's famous for. And guess who else features in this? Look at that. We do have a Luke. There's no Luke anywhere in here. Except, actually, that's not true. There is a Luke in the Tusken attack. He's actually in the speeder. Oh, no, that's for a different thing. Anyway, you have Luke here. And Luke is doing his Jedi training meditation inside Yoda's hut. Beautifully done, I must say. I'm very happy with this. Yoda, little short figure, can sit in place when it's closed, which is kind of nice. And let's move him aside. And that's it for the 12 heads that I have. Again, I believe there was a Darth Vader released. At least he shows up on a package. I've never seen it in person. And if I ever do find it, I will be getting it. And if it doesn't exist, it must have been an unproduced prototype. But of the 12 that do exist, that show up in the backing of the card, showing that there are 12 available, I have all of them. You will notice, however, Greedo is painted kind of turquoise here, and he's not turquoise here at all, which I think was a failing. But again, these are always pre-production models that they use in the cards. No argument with the quality of these and the fact that your brain can live within them. Much like they live within the battle, the battle sets, what do they call these? The box busters that I did another review of earlier. And if you want to find a review of the box busters, just search for that on my channel and you'll see that as well. And that is it for the 12 Star Wars heads from Micro Machines and Galoob. And Galoob being one of my favorite companies, because back in the day, their action fleet and their Micro Machines for Star Wars and other franchises were absolutely wonderful, and I collected as much as I could. And now I have these heads, which I confess I didn't pay much attention to back in the day, but I've been loving ever since. So that's it for me. Sean Huckster out. Stay tuned for more videos on Inside Micro Worlds.